Hello and welcome to the programme. This week we have some tries from the Premiership, National League and Schools Rugby. Rob Moffat stirs a little controversy, Iain Paxton looks back on his Scotland career, and we have the second part in our interview with Alan Lawson, the SRU President. But first, let's start with some of the highlights from the weekend's club rugby.
Well, you don't see a 42-42 draw every week, but that's what we got at Stirling when they hosted Aberdeen Grammar on Saturday. Here's two of the tries from Aberdeen's Cam Eyre and Will Wardlaw.
Defensively, I think both sides have things that they'll probably look at across the week. But for us, in terms of the result, to get 3 points with the number of injuries we've got, we had 12 guys unavailable today. Out of our squad, we've done really well.
Obviously we came down here to try and improve on our results from the last couple of weeks, and to be a high scoring game and just to sort of basically have a draw in the last couple of minutes was very frustrating.
Edinburgh Accies came back from 26-6 down at the break to beat Heriot's 28-26 at Goldenacre and record their first win of the season and pick up the Bill McLaren Shield. Curry and Gala both got good wins, while at the Greenyards Melrose couldn't stop Ayr from making it 5 out of 5. In the National League, Hawick ran in 10 tries to blitz bigger. Watsonians moved to second in the table after their win at Hillhead Jordan Hill, and Hamilton and Stu Mel got their first wins of the season. But in the top of the table clash, Glasgow Hawks had a bonus point win at Selkirk and are now the only unbeaten team in the National League.
Yeah, very disappointed with that. I don't think we performed as well as we could have today. Just basic errors in the key areas. You know, you saw us down in there, 22, camped out there for a good few minutes and we just couldn't turn it into points. All credit to Hawks, they played really well.
Weather's been good to us today, and managed to get the 5 points, which is really good, really pleased. Boys put in such a shift today. The forward pack was immense. Our defence held out pretty well, really pleased.
It was back to mixed results for Scotland's pro teams last week, with Glasgow sealing a first win at Scotsman over Connaught, while Edinburgh earned praise from Leinster's Joe Schmidt, but left Dublin with a solitary bonus point. This Friday, Glasgow take on Italian Zebra, looking for a second home win, while Edinburgh are in Newport to face the Dragons. Scottish wins could push Edinburgh and Glasgow into the top 4 this weekend. Now we turn our attention to schools rugby. The Brew and Dolphin Scottish Schools Cup competitions got underway last week, and the South Schools under-18s are back for an invitation match against the famous rugby school. But we start by asking Rob Moffat, the former Edinburgh and Scottish Schools coach, what he thinks about the importance of schools rugby to Scottish rugby success.
I think it's very important. I think if you come up here on a Saturday morning like a lot of other places and you see the number of... We had 12 teams playing last Saturday. We've got hundreds of kids just wanting to play the game, and I think that's what's important. You're obviously looking at the top end, the best players, but here it's just all about whoever wants to play gets a game of rugby. It's a pity in some respects we have this club-school almost divide, because the traditional fixtures that the private schools play that I'm seeing now, I can imagine when George Watson's play Merchiston, there'll be a bit of needle to that game and it will be competitive, and the Schools Cup has that. I agree, I would like to see it more competitive. I know people tend to worry about that word competitive or competition. Kids, that's what kids love. The harder the better. That's why we want to play South Schools today.
Well, you know that we've put boys into matches at Scotland at national, under 18, under 19, under 20 level, and really struggled to win games. It's not until they get to senior level that they seem to be able to get on a par with other nations around the world. I mean, it's about trying to improve that, isn't it, surely? And schools have a role to play. No, schools have it, and I think the schools and the clubs have done it. I think you'll see, I know Merchiston were down playing Kelso Harlequins 2 weeks ago. That sort of thing happens more often, and I think the more the better, because I know if you take I'll probably get slated for this, but I'm not worried, is that you look at the under-18 league in the Borders, it's very insular because they play each other. Why not play the best of other teams in Scotland more often? Get out of that syndrome. Just play the better teams wherever they are. And in terms of a return to professional rugby for Rob Moffat, is that ever going to happen?
You never know. I would never say never, but I'm happy where I am just now, and I'm not interested in anything else just now apart from that, because I think that there's enough here to keep me going, and I'm totally committed to the school here and I'm really enjoying it.
It was the first time this century that South of Scotland's schools team had taken part in a game of rugby, and ahead of their upcoming historic game against Rugby School down in England, they headed north to take on Dollar Academy, and it turned out to be a very high-scoring affair, Jamie Brand going over for one of Dollar's 6 tries from the first half. Selkirk, Peebles, Hawick, Earlston and Eyemouth High Schools were well represented in the South team, along with players from Jedburgh Grammar and Chris Patterson's old school, Galashiels Academy. But with just one training session under their belt, it was going to be a very big ask to compete with one of Scotland's top rugby playing schools. Both teams were playing running rugby, happy to move the ball about from anywhere on the pitch. The South's Kyle Stilley scored an early try, but as well as Jamie Brand's effort, Sam McDougall, Murray Semple and 2 tries from number 8 Ali Mackey saw Dollar Academy stretch out to a big lead by the break, despite the windy and wet conditions mixed in with the dazzling sunshine, which didn't help matters. Probably the best try of the game was this one, scored just before the break, the ball passing through at least a dozen pairs of hands before Lewis Hetman went over for the score to give his school a commanding 34-7 lead at the turn. Sam Bandine got a try back for the South after the break, but then Mackey went in for his hat-trick. At 41-12 it looked all over, but back came the South to run in a sensational try from well inside their own half. Winger Sam Covers took off but still had plenty of work to do on his way to the line. South School scored 3 more tries from Gary Robertson, Finlay Simpson and Jack Harrison, while Dollar's Ali Mackey went in for a 4th and Lewis Hatman a brace as their side took the honours.
A bit of a shock in the first half, we weren't up to the speed, but we ended up, we built a couple of face plays, stripped it wide, got up, scored. Decided second half, we thought, we need to build this up a wee bit further and get up the pace, got to the crucial rucks, used the ball wide, scored. It's well played by the boys.
We knew they were going to be big and physical, so we needed to put them down. A few missed tackles that led to tries, but we knew we could have it if we just met them for physicality and took the game to them.
Now for the second part in our interview with Alan Lawson, the new SRU President. He gives us his thoughts on the current state of rugby in Scotland.
I think the quality of the game has undoubtedly improved. Whether there's some of us who probably don't particularly like the way the game is being played. It's very physical, very attritional in some cases, and certainly in the pro game. The flair, the cheeky chappy, the Jim Rennick type player, there's less of that. It's more structured, and coaching does bring with it game plans and structures, which I like to play off the cuff. That's not really on the cards anymore. So I think the one thing is we need mums and dads to recognise there is no better game than rugby for getting kids of all shapes and sizes together, learning a team ethos, learning the disciplines and respects. And rugby is a fantastic game, the rough and tumble of it, plus this discipline. It's just a great game, and we need to convince mums and dads that that's the way we need their kids down. And what we're seeing right across the country is a phenomenal involvement by these mums and dads, volunteers, coaches with the youngsters. We just need to capture that and ensure that as many of these youngsters as possible get into the adult game.
He also told us about the key challenges he feels are facing Scottish rugby at the moment.
Currently we've got issues about the academies. Should they be club-based, should they be regional-based? And there's genuine concern there that clubs are losing players that they don't want to lose. How do we address that? That's not an easy one. Because in the old days we had the districts and you could play for all clubs, and if you're a good enough player at your club you could be picked. That's not the way that our system is working at the moment. So we need to address that. This underage thing, the health and safety issue with regard to young people playing adult rugby is an issue, and I know in many of the provincial areas they would struggle to put out adult teams if they didn't have access to some of these younger people. So there are many more, but those are the two of the issues. How we close the gap between the pro game and the amateur game, recognising we have amateurs. How we deal with our elite players, the programmes that they have, they work for. But at the end of the day, rugby is about fun and friendship at the grassroots level. And how do we find a way of having a great structure that everyone's happy with and we get a good competition? But at the end of the day, for the vast majority of people, rugby is for life and it is for fun and it is for friendship. And that's what makes our game stand out above so many other games.
Our 5 quick questions with Scotland legends is certainly causing a bit of interest on the Scotsman Rugby Show. This week it's Iain Paxton, the former Scotland and British and Irish Lions back row, who steps into the spotlight.
My first cap for Scotland was against New Zealand in 1981 in Dunedin, and it was obviously against the All Blacks, and it was a very close game, and it was one of these games that we might have just won if a couple of things had just gone the right way. The final score was 11-4 to New Zealand, but we had a fair bit of the game, so it was a memorable game for me in that respect. Boyhood hero would be Ron Glasgow, who played for Dunfermline. He was been brought up in Fife. There wasn't many rugby players came from the Fife area, but Ron Glasgow played at Dunfermline. And I was lucky enough to actually play in a game with Ron Glasgow when I was still a young lad and he was a bit older. That's a tough one because I was very fortunate to play in quite a number of games that Scotland were successful in and hadn't been for a while. But the one that probably sticks in my memory the most, funnily enough, would be at Murrayfield in 1986 when we won 33-6 against England. Toughest opponent, again, would go back to playing against the All Blacks. I was lucky enough to play against New Zealand 10 times, and in 8 or 9 of these games, Murray Mexted was the number 8, and well, he was a pretty formidable player, an athletic, mobile number 8. So I would put Mexted as probably my toughest player. I would have to probably bring Selkirk bias into it, and although he used to frustrate the life out of me at times when we weren't winning enough ball, and I'd turn round and ask him to kick the ball up the park, but he would run, and that was John Rutherford, and he could do such damage when he was running. But occasionally it was quite nice when he just kicked the ball and the forwards could just go after that. He could roll the ball into touch. It was far nicer seeing a line out 70 metres up the park than John running, trying to run out of our defence.
Curry and Gala scored over 80 points at the weekend, and this week they meet in the match of the day at Millennium Park. Heriots are away to league leaders Ayr, Melrose hit the road to Aberdeen, and Boroughmuir seek a first home win against Stirling, while Edinburgh Accies host Dundee. In the National League this weekend, Kelso and Hawick meet at Pointer Park in a border derby, while Watsonians host Selkirk at Myerside. Biggar, Glasgow Hawks and Hamilton all have home matches. That's it for another Scotsman Rugby Show. Join us next week.